The sun hung low in the sky, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and orange. Dust swirled around the cowboy's boots as he rode his horse carefully over the uneven rocks. Jake had traveled these canyons many times before. He knew every curve, every ledge, every hidden trail. But today something felt different. There was a quiet tension in the air, like the desert itself was holding its breath. Jake's horse, a strong brown stallion named Rust, sniffed the air nervously. Jake patted Rust's neck and whispered, "It's all right, boy. Just a long ride today." He squinted into the shadows of the canyon walls, looking for the familiar path that led out to the open plains. Suddenly, a faint sound reached his ears. At first, he thought it was the wind or maybe a distant bird. But then he heard it again, soft, uneven cries. He paused, listening carefully. The sound was coming from a narrow side canyon, a place even Jake rarely dared to go. Rust shifted uneasily under him. "Stay calm, Rust. Let's see what's there," Jake murmured. He nudged the horse forward, descending slowly into the rocky crevice. As he rounded a bend, Jake spotted her. She was a young girl, no older than 16, sitting against a jagged rock. Her clothing was torn and dirty, and blood stained her arm. Her hair, dark and tangled, fell over her face, hiding most of her features. She was shivering, and every movement looked painful. Jake's heart sank. He had seen injuries before, but something about this girl made him pause. She was alone and clearly in danger. He dismounted carefully, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Hey," he said gently. "Are you all right? Can you stand?" The girl's eyes flicked up at him, wide and frightened. She tried to speak, but only managed a faint, broken whisper. Jake could not understand the words, but the fear in her eyes was clear. "Don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I'll help you." He knelt beside her, carefully checking her injuries. Her arm was cut deeply, and her leg had a nasty bruise, probably from a fall. Jake tore a strip from his own shirt and began to wrap her arm, trying to stop the bleeding. "Can you walk?" he asked softly. She shook her head weakly. Her breathing was shallow and her lips were dry. Jake realized she could not make it out of the canyon alone. "All right," he said to himself. "We'll do this my way." He lifted her carefully into his arms, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. Rust nickered as they approached, sensing the tension. Jake swung her onto the horse in front of him, securing her as best he could. She clutched his shirt tightly as if fearing he might disappear. The ride out of the canyon was slow. Jake guided Rust along the narrow paths, always alert for loose rocks and sudden drops. The girl leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. He could feel her shaking, not from the cold but from fear. "Hang in there," Jake whispered. "We'll get you somewhere safe." The sun was setting when they finally reached a small clearing. Jake guided Rust to a spot where the horse could rest. He set the girl down gently and unwrapped a small water bottle from his pack. He held it to her lips and she drank carefully, her hands trembling. "Name?" he asked. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated. Her eyes darted around nervously. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "Lila." "Lila," Jake repeated. "All right, Lila, my name's Jake. You're safe now." She nodded slightly but did not speak again. Her eyes remained wide, scanning the shadows as if expecting someone to appear. Jake noticed the fear, but also something else, something strong, something that hinted she was not just an ordinary girl. She moved with care, every action deliberate, as if she had learned to survive in dangerous situations. Jake set up a small camp, using some rocks to create a makeshift shelter. He started a fire and pulled out a first aid kit from his pack. He cleaned her wounds carefully, talking to her in a calm, steady voice. She flinched at the touch, but she did not pull away. As the night fell, the stars appeared in the sky, twinkling brightly over the canyon. The air cooled and a quiet wind blew through the rocks. Lila shivered and wrapped her arms around herself. Jake handed her a blanket from his pack. "Here," he said. "This will keep you warm. You've been through a lot today." She took the blanket, holding it close. Her eyes, reflecting the firelight, seemed older than her age. She looked at Jake, and for a moment there was a spark of trust. "What happened to you, Lila?" Jake asked softly. She did not answer. Her eyes drifted to the horizon, and Jake realized that whatever her story was, it was not something she could share easily. He decided not to press. Sometimes the best help was just being there, offering protection without questions. The night passed slowly. Jake kept watch, listening to the sounds of the canyon. He heard the distant calls of coyotes and the soft rustle of the wind. But no one came near. Lila slept fitfully, her breathing shallow. Jake could see the pain etched on her face. In the early hours of the morning, Lila stirred. She looked at Jake with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm just a cowboy," Jake said with a small smile. "Someone who doesn't want to see anyone hurt." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. It was clear she was not used to kindness, not used to people looking out for her. But something in Jake made her feel safe, if only a little. The sun began to rise, casting pink and orange light over the canyon walls. Jake knew they couldn't stay in the clearing forever. Lila needed real help, and he had to get her somewhere she could recover properly. "Come on," he said gently. "We need to move. I know a place where you'll be safe." Lila hesitated, but then got up slowly. She leaned on Jake as they prepared to continue. As they walked, Jake noticed her watching the horizon, alert and cautious. She moved with a quiet strength, a survivor's instinct that told him she had endured much more than most people her age. They traveled carefully through the canyon, avoiding loose rocks and sudden drops. Jake kept glancing at the shadows, knowing that danger could be anywhere. He did not know what had brought Lila to this canyon, only that she had survived something terrible. By midday, they reached a small stream. Lila knelt to drink, and Jake filled his water bottle. The girl's hands were steady now, and she even smiled faintly. It was the first time Jake had seen her relax, even just a little. "Better?" he asked. She nodded, her dark eyes meeting his. "Yes," she said softly. They rested by the stream, and Jake took a moment to observe her. Lila had the bearing of someone important, someone used to being in charge. But she was also vulnerable, young, and in need of help. He realized that his simple act of helping her could change her life. Suddenly, a noise from the canyon entrance made them both freeze. A shadow moved among the rocks. Lila's eyes widened, and she took a step back behind Jake. "Don't worry," Jake said quietly. "I've got you." The shadow moved closer, and Jake realized it was a man searching for something or someone. He tightened his grip on his rifle, ready to defend Lila. But as the man approached, Jake saw that he was just another traveler, perhaps lost like them. The tension eased slightly, but Jake knew they could not let their guard down. They continued their journey, moving carefully along the canyon paths. Lila leaned on him when she needed support, and Jake guided her, always alert for danger. The bond between them grew quietly, built on trust and shared effort. As the sun dipped toward the horizon again, Jake spotted a small plateau overlooking the canyon. It would be a good place to rest for the night. He guided Rust up the rocky path and set up camp once more. Lila sat by the fire, warming her hands and watching him with a quiet curiosity. "You're strong," she said finally. Jake smiled. "So are you. You've survived a lot to get here." She looked down at the fire, silent for a moment. I was running," she said quietly. "From people who wanted to hurt me." Jake nodded. He did not need more details. He knew that whatever her story was, it was dangerous. And he knew one thing clearly. He would not let anything happen to her. Not while he could help. The stars appeared again over the canyon, and Jake kept watch through the night. Lila slept more peacefully now, and he could see the faint strength returning to her face. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The canyon was quiet once more, but Jake knew this was only the beginning of something bigger. Something that would test courage, trust, and the strength of human kindness. The first light of dawn crept over the canyon walls, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Jake stirred from his light sleep, stretching and glancing at Lila. She was awake too, sitting quietly by the fire, her dark eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting danger. He could see the tension in her posture, the way she hugged herself tightly even though the morning was warm. "Morning," Jake said softly. "Sleep all right?" Lila nodded, though she did not speak. She had learned that words could be dangerous. Some truths were better left unsaid, at least until she could trust someone, and in Jake she had begun to find a strange sense of safety. They prepared to move again, packing their meager supplies. Jake helped her onto Rust, making sure she was secure. Lila climbed onto the horse with surprising agility, considering her recent injuries. The two of them started down the canyon path, careful to avoid loose stones and unstable cliffs. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. Sometimes silence carried more understanding than words could. Lila rode close to Jake, her hand brushing his when she needed support. He did not pull away. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. She was not alone. As they rounded a bend, the sound of footsteps reached them. Lila tensed, her eyes wide with fear. Jake raised a hand, signaling her to stay calm. He scanned the canyon carefully, noting the direction of the sound. "They're close," Lila whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake nodded. "We'll be ready." "Don't worry." From the rocks above, figures appeared, mounted warriors moving swiftly, skilled and dangerous. Lila's face paled. She knew them. These were the men who had been hunting her, the ones who wanted to capture her and take control of her people. Jake's heart pounded, but he stayed calm. He guided Russ to a narrow ledge where the pursuers could not follow easily. Lila clutched his arm, fear evident in her grip, but she did not panic. Her instinct for survival was strong. She had been running from danger for her entire life, and now she was facing it again. The warriors below called out, demanding she surrender. Their voices were harsh, filled with authority and threat. Lila shook her head, refusing to answer. Jake could see the determination in her eyes, the refusal to give in. He tightened his hold on Rust's reins, preparing for a careful descent. "Hold on," he said quietly. "We're going to get through this." Using a narrow path along the canyon wall, they slowly moved downward, avoiding the open areas where the pursuers could see them. Lila's knowledge of the terrain helped. She pointed out hidden trails, secret dips, and rock formations that could hide them. Jake followed her guidance, trusting her instincts. Hours passed as they moved through the rocky labyrinth. The sun climbed higher, making the canyon a maze of shadows and light. The warriors below tried to follow, but Jake's careful planning and Lila's knowledge kept them ahead. Every step, every choice was a test of courage and intelligence. Finally, they reached a stream that wound through a hidden valley. The water was clear and cool, a small oasis in the harsh desert. Lila stopped and dismounted, kneeling to drink. Jake watched her, impressed by her resilience. Even in danger, she remained composed, resourceful, and strong. "This way," she said after a moment, pointing to a narrow path leading up the opposite canyon wall. "They won't follow here." Jake followed, guiding Rust carefully up the steep incline. Lila rode beside him, her movements precise and confident. They climbed higher and higher, the canyon opening into a wide plateau. From there, they could see the vast desert stretching in all directions, but no sign of the pursuers. They had made it, at least for now. Lila exhaled, a mixture of relief and exhaustion in her breath. Jake dismounted, helping her down from Rust. "You did well," he said, smiling. "We're not safe yet, but we're out of immediate danger." Lila looked at him, her dark eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and something else, something unspoken. She wanted to tell him who she truly was, but the words were heavy, filled with danger and responsibility. Finally, she took a deep breath. "My name is Lila," she said slowly. "I am not just any girl. I am the daughter of a chief, the Apache chief." Jake froze for a moment, processing her words. "A chief's daughter?" he repeated. "Yes," she said quietly. "They want to capture me to control my people. I've been hiding, running, always running." Jake looked at her with newfound respect. Her bravery was remarkable. Not only had she survived injuries and danger, but she had done so with intelligence and courage far beyond her years. "You're safe with me," Jake said firmly. "I won't let anyone take you." Lila nodded, a faint smile appearing on her face. She had not known trust in a long time, but with Jake she felt a glimmer of hope. They spent the rest of the day moving carefully through the plateau, using the rocks and small hills for cover. Jake guided them to a hidden canyon, where he knew a small cave could serve as a shelter. Lila helped him set up a secure spot, using her knowledge of survival to gather water and find edible plants nearby. As night fell, the stars blanketed the sky. Lila and Jake sat by a small fire, sharing a quiet moment. "Why are you helping me?" Lila asked, finally breaking the silence. Jake shrugged. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because no one deserves to be hunted and hurt. And because you're brave." "I can see that." She studied him for a moment, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You are different from others," she said softly. "Others would have left me to die," Jake smiled. "Humans can be stubborn, and sometimes that stubbornness can save lives." The night passed without incident, but Jake remained vigilant. He took turns keeping watch while Lila rested. He knew that the danger was not over. The men who sought her would not give up easily, but for the first time he believed they had a chance to survive. In the early hours of the next day, distant voices echoed through the canyon. Lila stiffened, recognizing the calls of her people. She had signaled them the previous day, hoping they would find her. Jake's heart lifted. Reinforcements were coming. Soon figures appeared along the canyon ridge, warriors from Lila's tribe, moving with precision and skill. They quickly assessed the situation, surrounding the plateau with a careful strategy. The leader, a tall man with an authoritative presence, dismounted and approached Jake and Lila. "You are safe now," he said to Lila, his voice firm but gentle. "My daughter, you are home." Lila ran to him, relief and joy washing over her face. Jake watched quietly, knowing he had played a role in keeping her alive. The chief noticed him and studied him carefully. "You are the one who helped my daughter?" the chief asked, his eyes sharp. "Yes," Jake said, standing tall. "I found her injured and helped her." "That's all?" The chief nodded slowly, respect appearing in his expression. "You have courage," he said. "You have protected her when others would not. You are a friend to our people." Jake felt a sense of pride, not for himself, but for doing what was right. Lila stood beside her father, looking back at Jake with gratitude in her eyes. Over the next few days, Lila recovered under the care of her tribe. Jake helped where he could, sharing his knowledge of the land and assisting in small tasks. He learned more about their traditions, their way of life, and their deep respect for courage and honor. Lila grew stronger each day, her wounds healing, and her spirit renewed. She often sought Jake's company, asking him about life outside the canyons, about the world beyond her tribe. He shared stories of the plains, of towns and people, of survival and human ingenuity. She listened intently, fascinated by his perspective, and slowly, the bond between them deepened. One evening, as the sun set over the canyon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Lila stood beside Jake. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything."
"For saving me."
"And for trusting me," Jake smiled. "No one should face the world alone," he said. "We all need someone to watch our back." Lila nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She had spent her life running and hiding, but now she understood that trust and courage could create a new path. And Jake had shown her that humans could be allies, protectors, and friends in ways she had never imagined. As night fell over the canyon, the stars reflected in Lila's eyes, bright and full of hope. Jake stood beside her, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they had faced danger together, and they had survived. They had discovered the strength of human courage, the power of trust, and the importance of protecting those who could not protect themselves. In that quiet canyon, under the endless sky, a new chapter began, one filled with respect, friendship, and the unspoken promise that they would face whatever came next, together.